What's up? I'm Lily Revenge Crown, brings you the stories that keep you hooked. If that sounds good, smash subscribe and let's go.
The wedding reception smelled like gardenias and champagne. My sister Emma had spent $180,000 on this day, most of it Dad's money naturally, and it showed in every crystal chandelier, every silk-draped table, every orchid centerpiece flown in from Hawaii. I was sitting alone at table 14, the one tucked behind a marble pillar where family puts relatives they're obligated to invite but would prefer to hide. Next to me, Dad's accountant's wife who'd already had too much wine, and a couple I'd never met who spent the entire cocktail hour arguing about parking. Then the investor appeared. He was tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. I recognized him from the acquisition meeting 3 weeks ago. Daniel Morrison, lead partner at Vertex Capital, the firm that had just paid $1.2 billion for Aries MedTech. My company. The one Dad had sold without telling me. Morrison approached the bar, ordered a scotch, then turned and looked directly at me. His eyes narrowed with recognition. Mia-chan. He walked over, extending his hand. Daniel Morrison. We met briefly at the acquisition closing. I shook his hand. I remember. I've been meaning to reach out. He pulled up the empty chair next to me uninvited. I had some questions about the compliance documentation. Specifically, the daily authorization protocol. The table went quiet. The accountant's wife stopped mid-sip. The arguing couple paused their parking dispute. Morrison continued, oblivious to the sudden tension. So you're the one who authorizes all device operations daily? The biometric system? That's remarkable architecture. I've never seen anything quite like it. Across the ballroom I watched my sister Emma freeze mid-laugh. She'd been showing her bridesmaids photos of her Maldives honeymoon itinerary, 14 days at a resort that cost $3,000 per night. Now her phone hung forgotten in her hand. My father, who'd been dancing with my mother, stopped moving. His face went from flushed to pale in approximately 3 seconds. He exchanged terrified looks with my brother Brent, who stood near the dessert table with a champagne flute in each hand. Dad broke away from Mom and rushed over. His voice came out hoarse, almost strangled. Daniel, what authorization? Morrison looked confused. The FDA compliance protocol. 21 CFR Part 11. Every Class 3 medical device requires daily biometric authorization from a licensed supervisor. Mia designed the entire system. It's brilliant, actually. Each device sends a... Daniel. My father's hand clamped on Morrison's shoulder. Too tight. Too desperate. This is my daughter's wedding. Surely business can wait. Emma's wedding, I corrected quietly. I'm just a guest. Morrison's confusion deepened. But the documentation lists you as Chief Regulatory Engineer. Primary FDA license holder. Sole authorized supervisor for device operations. I calmly sipped my wine. Let the silence stretch. Counted to 5 in my head. Then I set down my glass. Very carefully. Very deliberately. Mr. Morrison, did my father explain how the daily authorization system works? Well, Did he mention that without my biometric approval, every device enters protective shutdown within 24 hours? Morrison's scotch paused halfway to his lips. I'm sorry, what? My father's voice cracked. Mia, don't. Did he tell you that I'm the only FDA-licensed regulatory engineer in the entire facility? That my brother Brent, who Dad introduced as Chief Technology Officer, has never held a federal license of any kind? Morrison set down his drink. His expression shifted from confused to very, very focused. Mr. Morrison. I pulled out my phone, opened the notification I'd been staring at for the past 3 hours. Would you like to see what happens when I decline authorization? The conference room at Vertex Capital had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor. 20 investors. 15 lawyers. My father at the head of the table wearing his most expensive suit and his most confident smile. I sat in the back row where I'd been told to sit. Where I'd been sitting for 8 years. Gentlemen, ladies, Dad began, his surgeon's voice smooth as silk. Thank you for your interest in Aries MedTech. I'm Edward Chin, founder and CEO. With me today is my son Brent, our Chief Technology Officer and the brilliant mind behind our revolutionary medical devices. Brent nodded like he'd practiced in a mirror. Which he probably had. And this is my daughter Mia. She handles our regulatory paperwork and equipment maintenance. Keeps everything running smoothly behind the scenes. Paperwork. Maintenance. Behind the scenes. I was the woman who'd spent 8 years designing every device in our catalog. Who held the only active FDA license to supervise Class 3 medical device operations. Who'd built the biometric authorization system from scratch because federal regulations required it. But sure. Paperwork. Morrison had asked exactly one question that should have stopped everything. Your compliance documentation lists Mia Chin as primary engineer on every patent. Can you clarify the division of responsibilities? Dad hadn't missed a beat. Mia does the technical documentation. The filing, the forms, that sort of thing. But the creative vision, the actual engineering, that's all Brent. Brent couldn't code his way out of a paper bag. Morrison had nodded, seemingly satisfied. The deal closed at 4:47 p.m. $1.2 billion. Handshakes all around. Champagne. Photos. I left at 5:02 p.m., walked to my car in the parking garage, and sat in the driver's seat staring at my steering wheel. At 5:15 p.m. my phone buzzed. Biometric authorization required. Aries MedTech FDA compliance protocol. 47 devices awaiting daily supervisor approval. Authorize operations? I stared at it for a long time. Then I pressed decline. That night I couldn't sleep. Instead I sat at my kitchen table with a spreadsheet and a decade of bank statements, adding up exactly what my family had cost me. Not just money. Everything. Age 22, $18,000 for Brent's gambling debts after his first semester at Stanford. I was working 2 jobs to pay tuition at state school. Dad took the money from my savings without asking. Family takes care of family, he said. Age 23, I was accepted to MIT's graduate program. Full scholarship. Dream school. I turned it down because Dad needed me to keep the company running while Brent was in rehab. For the 3rd time. Age 24, $31,000 when Brent crashed Dad's car drunk at 3 a.m. I'd been saving for a down payment on an apartment. Dad withdrew the funds to pay the settlement. You understand, right? He's going through a difficult time. Age 26, $45,000 for Brent's startup idea. A crypto app that never launched. Dad took it from my college fund. I found out when I tried to pay for my FDA licensing certification and discovered $127 in the account. I had to take out loans. Age 27, I got engaged. His name was Marcus. He was patient, kind, and willing to wait while I worked 80-hour weeks. Until he realized I'd always be waiting for the next Brent emergency. He left 6 months before the wedding. I still have the ring. Age 28, $67,000 when Brent was caught selling Adderall. Dad hired lawyers. The best lawyers. Lawyers who billed $800 per hour. I was sleeping on a cot in my office eating vending machine dinners, building the devices that would eventually sell for $1.2 billion. Brent got probation. Age 29. Dad gave Brent a corner office and the title VP of Innovation. Brent had never innovated anything except excuses. Age 30, $89,000 for Brent's wedding. The marriage lasted 2 months. Dad told me I was too career-focused to understand commitment. I'd broken off an engagement to keep the family company running. Age 31. Emma's wedding planning began. Dad wrote checks for everything. The venue. The dress. The honeymoon. Meanwhile, I was driving a 2008 Honda Civic with a check engine light I couldn't afford to fix. Total financial cost, $250,000. Total emotional cost, incalculable. MIT scholarship. Abandoned. Career opportunities. Declined. Engagement. Broken. A decade of being the reliable one, which meant the one we can ignore. And 3 weeks ago, Dad sold my company for $1.2 billion, gave Brent credit for my work, and introduced me to investors as paperwork and maintenance. The devices I built required my daily authorization. Federal law. Non-negotiable. Without my thumbprint, every device would shut down in 24 hours. I wondered how long it would take them to notice. Morrison's scotch sat forgotten on the table. You're telling me the entire operation depends on your daily authorization? 21 CFR Part 11, I said calmly. Electronic records and signatures for Class 3 medical devices. Every device must be authorized daily by an FDA-licensed supervisor. I designed the system. I hold the license. I provide the authorization. And if you don't authorize? Protective shutdown. Automatic. The devices enter a locked state. They can't be operated until a licensed supervisor reauthorizes them. Morrison's jaw tightened. How many licensed supervisors does the facility have? One. And that would be me. My father's hand was shaking. Mia, sweetheart, this isn't the time. When is the time, Dad? I looked at him directly. Was it the time when you introduced me as paperwork to 20 investors? Was it the time when you gave Brent credit for devices he can't even describe? Or was it the time you sold my company for $1.2 billion and didn't tell me until after you'd signed? Emma rushed over, her wedding dress rustling. Mia, please. It's my wedding day. Can't you just what, Emma? Just authorize the devices? Just pretend Dad didn't commit securities fraud? Just keep being the reliable one while everyone else gets champagne and credit. I pulled up my phone, showed Morrison the screen. Biometric authorization required. 72 hours overdue. All devices in protective shutdown. Federal compliance violation imminent. Morrison went very still. 72 hours? I declined authorization the day of the acquisition closing. The devices have been in shutdown for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Morrison's voice cracked. We have hospitals waiting on device shipments. Clinical trials scheduled. FDA inspections. I know. I sipped my wine. I designed the shipment schedule. I wrote the clinical trial protocols. I prepared for the FDA inspections. Then why? Because for 8 years I've been invisible. The reliable one. The one who keeps everything running while other people take bows. I wanted to see what would happen if I stopped being invisible. Brent stumbled over, champagne sloshing. You're insane. You're going to destroy the company. Your company? I laughed. Came out sharper than I intended. Brent, you can't code. You failed intro to programming twice. You've never held an FDA license. You don't know the difference between a biometric authorization system and a bicycle lock. Morrison stood abruptly. Mr. Chin, I need to speak with you. Privately. Now. My father's face had gone from pale to gray. This is my daughter's wedding. Your daughter's wedding just became a federal compliance crisis. Morrison's voice cut like glass. You have 47 medical devices in shutdown. You have hospitals threatening lawsuits. You told us your son was the chief engineer. But your daughter, the woman you described as maintenance, is the only licensed supervisor in the building. Emma burst into tears. Brent threw his champagne glass. It shattered against the marble floor. My mother appeared from nowhere, grabbing my arm. Mia, fix this. Right now. I removed her hand gently. No. No. Her voice went shrill. You're going to ruin your sister's wedding over your pride. Pride. I stood, setting down my wine glass with exaggerated care. You want to talk about pride? Let's talk about the $180,000 wedding. The Maldives honeymoon. Brent's corner office. The company Dad sold for $1.2 billion using my designs. We gave you a job. I built the company. My voice carried across the ballroom. Conversations stopped. People turned. Every device. Every patent. Every line of code. I built it. And Dad sold it by telling investors I was paperwork and maintenance. Morrison pulled out his phone. I'm calling our legal team. What happened next moved faster than anyone expected. Sunday, 10 p.m., wedding night. Morrison's lawyers reviewed the acquisition documents. Found that Edward Chin had misrepresented the company's regulatory structure. Brent Chin was listed as chief engineer, but held no FDA credentials. Monday, 8 a.m., FDA inspector arrived unannounced at Aries MedTech. Found all 47 devices in protective shutdown. Read compliance warnings on every screen. Monday, 2 p.m., inspector's report confirmed that Brent Chin had never completed required FDA training. Had never been authorized to supervise medical device operations. Had never even taken the certification exam. Tuesday morning, FBI opened investigation. 18 U.S.C. 1343. Wire fraud. Misrepresentation in interstate commerce involving $1.2 billion. Tuesday afternoon. Morrison's firm filed emergency injunction. Demanded return of all acquisition funds, plus damages. Wednesday, my father's lawyer called me 14 times. I answered on the 15th. Mia. His voice was defeated. Your father is prepared to restore your position. Full equity. Chief engineer title. Whatever you want. What I want, I said carefully, is for him to tell the truth. In court. Under oath. About who built the company. He's willing to settle. I'm not. Thursday, 9 a.m. Federal marshals arrested my father at his surgical practice. The local news cameras caught everything. His hands in cuffs. His carefully cultivated reputation crumbling in real time. Brent was arrested that afternoon at a blackjack table in Atlantic City. He'd taken a $200,000 advance against his equity and lost most of it. Morrison called me Friday afternoon. The investors want to make this right. We're offering you complete ownership of the biometric system. Full IP rights. Plus $50 million for licensing. 20% ongoing royalties. I did the math. 20% of $1.2 billion. And my father? 8 to 12 years. Wire fraud, securities fraud, FDA violations. Brent's looking at 5. I'll think about it, I said. Emma didn't speak to me for 4 months. Then she called. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't know what he'd been doing. I know. We talked for an hour. Not forgiveness. But something. Brent wrote from prison. I didn't respond. Mom called once about forgiveness. I deleted the voicemail. Dad's trial starts next month. I'll testify. I didn't take Morrison's job offer. Instead, I launched Chin Regulatory Solutions. FDA compliance consulting. 8 licensed engineers. No family businesses. On my desk, my framed FDA license. My name. Not Brent's. Not Dad's. My. Morrison sends referrals and pays premium rates. Last week, Dad's lawyers offered $2.8 million for a reduced sentence recommendation. I wrote back, absolutely not. Some people deserve exactly what they built. I built the system. I held the license. I pressed decline. When the empire crashed, I walked away with $50 million and my integrity intact. Dad taught me one lesson. Never underestimate paperwork and maintenance. Because sometimes the paperwork keeps the machine running. And the maintenance worker knows how to turn it off.